Hi, and welcome to another edition of Dream Talks. It is a privilege and an honor to have a friend of mine from California actually with us today. I recently found out that this person relocated to the Tennessee area, and I was so happy to reconnect. And one of the reasons is that there's a big part of my dream life that has to do with multiple conversations that I had with her. So if you would welcome Jordan. Hey, Jordan.
Hi, John. Thank you for having me on. This is exciting.
This is so good. Gosh, how long has it been? It's been a minute.
At least 6 to 7 years.
Yeah.
It's been a long while, but it's so cool how people kind of circle back around and orbit back into your sphere. So it's cool to reconnect.
Yes. How did we meet?
Honestly, I think I'm kind of fuzzy on the exact details, but it was definitely through like a dream conference. I think it was one of Mary Crowley's invitations and things like that in the not in the Bay Area, in the LA area. There's like a small group of people that were really going after like dreams and the prophetic. And so I was a part of that group. And I think that I met you somehow in that circle.
Did we meet at, I think it was the Anaheim House of Prayer, where Mary and I did like a prophecy and dream night. And there was like 20 people or 25 people. It wasn't a real big thing. And then we all went out to dinner afterwards, or like 9 of us went out to dinner, right?
Right. I do remember that. Yeah. So that must have been it.
Mm-hmm. And we had a friend that shared about her zombie dream. Right. And then I think you started talking about your dream, but then we ended up getting together, you and your sister and I, like, if I remember correctly, it was like 3 times for coffee, because you had this crazy, incredible, vivid dream that had like this riddle in it at the end. And we were trying to figure out the riddle, and it took a minute, but then we finally figured it out, right?
Right. Well, one thing that I've kind of learned about God is that he speaks over time through dreams. So a lot of times it's like, even from years past, like, so sometimes he'll connect like a dream or a message from like a couple years ago, and then he'll connect it to a dream that I'm having currently or what I'm going through currently. And then it just, so for me, it did take a while. And I think that it was frustrating waiting to see how everything was going to connect and what it meant and just trying to figure everything out and stuff. But yeah, the dream language was how God spoke to me a lot during that time. I was actively pursuing it, and I was asking God for dreams every night. I forgot how you call it. I was more of like a daytime like vision person. Like I would see visions and images and stuff. And then during this time period, I just took off. I was having like vivid, clear dreams like almost every night during like this 2-3 year time period, because I was actively asking God. And it was about all sorts of things. It was about business, relationships, people, just where I was going in life. And the interesting thing is there was a lot of dreams that I had that were very accurate that I never asked God about, like other people, their businesses. I had 2 dreams about 2 kind of associates that were not close friends, but they were just like work associates. I had vivid dreams about their businesses, and it came to pass within months. So it was a very exciting time, but for me, it became a little bit overwhelming because I was having dreams every night. And sometimes there were long saga dreams. Sometimes there was so much details and information in there that it was just so overwhelming. And so I just started journaling them, sending myself emails and just keeping track of the details and things like that. But I think over time it was exciting as well, because it's like you can learn how God speaks to you, what symbolism he used specifically for you. Dogs and cats might mean different things for different people in different dreams. So I think it was cool to kind of see how someone can have different elements in their dreams, but it was a totally different message from God. And that third person you're talking about, we end up actually being roommates. And she was a prolific dreamer as well. And she had some really good, accurate dreams as well. So I also feel like living with someone that was a dreamer actually made my dreams more vivid and stronger. It's almost just kind of like, if you're training or if you're doing any kind of activity and you're around someone that's dominant in that, it actually rubs off on you. So even during that time period, we were both having like some really cool dreams that we would share with each other, and then we would keep track to see like which ones would come to pass and things like that, and we would just share back and forth. So a couple of cool dreams situations I had. So I'm happy to share whatever you guys are interested in hearing about.
Well, we love dreams, and you're definitely our kind of people, because our people are dreamers. They're usually people that some have been, they have such dreams and vivid dreams about what's going on the national level or business, or a lot of
Right.
us have moved across the country because of dreams, or started businesses, or are pursuing things in ministry because of dreams. And so the conversations that we have on Dream Talks is people whose lives have been changed by dreams and the intelligence in them. And so we take them. Our community takes dreams as intelligence, something to be, that's encrypted, that needs to be cracked and decoded, but something with very practical, actionable steps in your
Right.
life, more than just, oh, well, God loves you, or oh, you should pray or read your Bible. Like something that's really specific that could cause you, with no prior notice, to move from one state to another or something like that. And I know you understand, because you've had decisions in your life that you've made based on dreams, right?
So that's an interesting thing, is that there have been dreams where I have taken action just based off of it, but also just like recently moving from California to Tennessee, didn't have a dream, didn't really ask God. I just thought about it one day and I was like, ready for a move, and then just did it and everything lined out. So sometimes I feel like I don't wait for dreams to give me direction. And sometimes I just go, or sometimes, I don't know, sometimes I feel like God will give you a dream to give you a little bit more details before you make a decision. And I've had kind of different life experiences where, for instance, like I took this job in France when I was younger. No direction from God, no yes or no, nothing, just making choices, just predicated on like the career direction I wanted to go in. And that didn't work out, but God made it work to where I was able to still come back and, get back into the flow. But there, times like now where we moved to Tennessee, everything was seamless. Everything worked out. We got the exact apartment and house we wanted, the neighborhood we wanted to be in and everything, but there was no dreams attached to it. So sometimes I feel like that's been a journey as well, as like, how much feedback do you need from God before you make choices in life and things like that. But I also feel like I've been walking with God for a long time. So I feel like he trusts me with making choices. Just like as I have a daughter, like as she's getting older, I don't have to tell her to do every single thing. She knows how, like when we wake up, we go get breakfast, we brush our teeth. She knows the routine. So I feel like it's like that with God. But I also feel like there was a time in my life when I was asking God very specific questions. And I think somewhere in the Bible, I'm so rusty right now, it talks about that, when something's on your heart, God will address it. And so I've had a lot of dreams where there was like, business decisions or things that I was really nervous about, like where there was like a lot of money involved or just big life choices that I was praying and asking God for like dreams and directions and stuff. And during those times I would sit and wait and wait and wait. So that's just kind of how my walk is with God.
That's fascinating. Do you remember the biggest piece of intel that you got from a dream, whether it was a business decision or just a level of learning about somebody in your life? I a lot of times I'll use dreams almost as a background check. If I meet somebody that I've never met before, I'll just ask God about that person. I'll go to sleep. We call going to sleep gathering intel.
Right.
Great way to stay. Instead of I'm taking a nap, I'm gathering intel. And then God will speak about that person, and just like you said, and then the next 3 or 4 conversations are what you already had in the dream, and so it's coming, and it's almost not fair in some cases. But do you ever have any situations or specifics that you could talk about where God's given you a piece of intelligence that you used in your life because of a dream?
Well, I have a couple of cool ones. I have one that's kind of short, and then I have one that's kind of longer, the one I shared with you when we met about 7 years ago. So this one I think is important because I was about 21. I was just into my career, which was like in sports and sports marketing and things like that. And I think it's interesting because this is the first time I've actually specifically like went to sleep and I was like, God, I need help. Like, right. So I worked for a sports agency firm in Chicago. I was 21, and the CEO of the firm tasked me with coming up with a brand new marketing idea that hasn't been done for athletes. And I mean, mind you, sports have been around for like 50, 60 years. Everything has been done under the sun. And I was really, timid and overwhelmed because I was 21 and this was like 2 weeks onto the job. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, like this is it. So I had a little sticky pad next to my bed, which I encourage people to have, just a journal or a sticky pad. And now we have phones that you can record stuff. And I just had like this little random thought. I didn't really pray too hard about it. I was just like, God, like I really need help. Like, and I didn't think I was going to have a dream about it. I was just saying it kind of just like as an exhale off before I went to bed. And that night, God gave me this really cool idea. I woke up in the middle of the night, scribbled down the idea, went back to sleep. And then when I woke up the next morning, I did a little bit more research, submitted it to the CEO. Long story short, it went on to be a really huge sports marketing an idea at that time. This is like 2008 or 2007, excuse me, but it was coming out in 2008. And I thought that was really neat. So that kind of sparked me on kind of just seeing that God was really speaking to me directly and addressing exact questions that I had in dreams. And that was when I was 21. So the momentum kind of built over time. And then it wasn't until like maybe about 5, 6, 7 years later is when I started getting like prolific dreams like every night. And then I started getting connected with more dreamers and community of dreamers. And then all my friends were dreamers. Like, you know, you just get sucked into that world. And that's when I started getting really exciting dreams. Like that's when I started getting saga dreams. I started seeing dreams about colleagues or friends or just even people I didn't know too well, like maybe work associates, but I would have a dream about them that was spot on. And I knew it was from God because I would have the courage to tell them, but I would always I was actually kind of embarrassed about having a dream about them. So I think I didn't know how to present it to them. So I always kind of, you know, present it in a fun, you know, light manner to see how they would receive it. And if they said, no, that's not me at all, I'm like, oh, it's just a dream, you know, and I could just kind of walk it off.
Yeah.
So that's actually kind of how my dream life started. So there's a number of different examples and I'm happy to share different ones, but that's kind of like the first dream that I remember that God gave me for a sports marketing idea that a major, you know, sports figure like ran with it. And like, you know, it was a really big kind of deal for like the 2008 Chinese Olympics in Beijing.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's big time.
Yeah.
You've always worked with big brands, big companies, people that are going places.
I think so. I mean, I've always just been kind of like a background dancer, and that's my kid in the back. But I really think that I grew up around that. I've been around those types of people. And I think even what I'm doing now, I think everything has been preparation for that, learning how to deal with people at higher levels, whether they're celebrities or just kind of like wealthy individuals, and be able to speak to people's lives like that. A lot of people that I meet with, I always like try to see if they're dreamers or like if God's been talking to them in some kind of way. So it's been very cool to kind of not come at people in the traditional like evangelism kind of way, you know, because I feel like God speaks to, you know, non-believers as well through dreams. And sometimes when they share a dream, I can kind of see like where they're at in their life. Like, are they open to receiving stuff? Like, you know, are they going through a hard time? Is there something that I can encourage them with and things like that? So it's definitely a tool that I use a lot when I meet people all the time.
Wow. Can you share what you do now?
So, you know, not saying specifics because, but I do work with a top podcaster, and he brings on some really top tier guests that really are kind of exposing what's going on in the world nationwide, just what's going on, like just in general. And we bring in some really good heavy hitter guests, which are exciting as well. And I think that I'm finally aligned with kind of like where I want to be in life. Like I used to work with a lot of athletes and celebrities and kind of like LA, Silicon Valley, which was great and all, but I don't really feel like that was really like my life calling. Like I was just doing that to pay the bills and just to, you know, get on in life. But I really feel like what I'm doing now and the research that I get to do with the entity and the company that I work with really aligns with my purpose and mission. And that really is just kind of like exposing like a lot of anti-human trafficking things, exposing a lot of things that's going on a national level, global level, and things like that. So it's interesting because actually never heard about this person before 2 months prior to like getting the job. But a week or two before they actually offered me the job, it was a really long process. It was almost like a month and a half, which was fine because I actually had a dream like a couple nights before they called. And in the dream, I was in the classroom writing on the whiteboard everything that this person was saying. taking notes and like helping them shape like some ideas. And that's exactly what happened. A couple of days later, they were like, we want to bring you on and you help us with some research and things like that. So that actually kind of gave me peace because the hiring process was almost 4 weeks. And I was like, well, God, like, should I look for something else? And then I had that dream and I was like, oh, it's done. Like I was confident. I was like, no, I just got to wait. And then I also had a girlfriend 2 weeks prior that had a dream. And she told me, she goes, oh, I had a dream that you got the job. So even now, and I love it when other people have dreams for me, because sometimes I feel like our heart can be deceitful and I can kind of, want something so bad that I'll dream about it kind of thing. And so this girlfriend of mine, when she called and told me that she had a dream that I had the job like 2 weeks prior before they even called, that was exciting for me because like, I don't know, I just feel like hearing it from a third party is just a better feeling because it doesn't feel like it's contrived from you or you're trying to make it up or you're trying to force God's hand or anything. So that was just recent. So yeah, so I've had a lot of dreams in between. I've had serious dreams. I had fun dreams. And then I had like a real pivotal dream about 7 years ago. And that's the one that had the riddle in it. So I thought that was cool because I started to learn how God was speaking to me. And it was very interesting how he gave me that dream, because not all my dreams are like that. Some dreams are very straightforward, like the sports marketing dream, clear as day, like 3 words. I woke up, wrote them down. I was like, that's it. The dream with my current client that I have, it was pretty clear and things like that. But then some dreams are really kind of like a puzzle. And I've had to navigate that. And that's actually, sometimes it's given me a lot of frustration and a lot of like things that I had to work through in the midst of those dreams, because I think things inside of me had to, be purged out and worked through. And I think it's interesting because I think that just goes to show that God really, even though he's the same, he changes how he does things sometimes so that you don't stay the same, so that you grow or you can be flexible or you can be, capable and adaptable. So that's been kind of like my journey.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, let's jump into that riddle dream. I can't wait to have people hear that.
I had to pull it up.
Yeah.
That dream was a long time ago. That was like 2016. So I had to pull it up to refresh my memory because I remembered the vague details, but I forgot all the things that went into it. So it was interesting because at the time I was dating someone that I felt like was a really good fit for me. Not that I heard from God or anything, but I was asking God while I was dating him. And I do this whether I'm meeting like coworkers or potential clients or just people I want to work with. I always start asking God about these people because I feel like we can only see so much on the surface. And, when I'm dealing with big deals or large money amounts or big investments, I want to make sure that I'm not jumping the gun. And I just learned to kind of just check in with God. And sometimes he responds right away. And sometimes I don't hear anything. So sometimes I have to decide, like, do I wait? Do I make, decisions and things like that? So with this individual, he seemed like a really good fit for everything I was looking for in a person. He was really open to Christianity. He came from like a Christian nation, Serbia, but he himself didn't have like a personal relationship with God per se, but very open to that. But I think the thing that was most exciting about this person to me is that he was also a dreamer. And that was super exciting. Wow. Because he would have dreams and then ask me questions about God. And I was like, oh, God's talking to him. Like, this is super exciting. Like, I thought it was the best because I felt like, I don't know, I just felt like, that God, like, like how it says, like, the Spirit draws people. It just felt like this person was being drawn to God, that they had a real, like, desire to know him. And then, like, he was really interested in dreams. And then when he found out I was into dreams, I was like, oh, this is so cool. Because most people think, well, at least back in the day, that you were weird, right? So I would tell people, oh, I had a dream about you and this and this. And people would be like, okay. So this person, I really was like excited that he was a dreamer as well. But so our relationship was fine per se, but there was things that going on externally in his life where he seemed kind of checked out from time to time. Like he was working for a big tech company. He just seemed kind of like, not fulfilled where he was at. And I couldn't tell, like, was it me? Was it the work? Like where he was, everything like that. So I started praying. And on the surface, this person would always say, no, everything's fine. Like I would always check in, like, are you sure? Like, it everything's fine. Everything's fine. And I did believe him because I felt like, well, I'll tell you after I read the dream, because I felt like to this person, they didn't really understand what was going on in themselves. So they didn't really have an answer. So they really couldn't give me an answer. But I felt like God was showing me what was going on inside this person so that I could decide if this is something that would work for me. So, just kind of give the basics of the dream. It was on a college campus. So anytime it's like college, I always kind of get sad when it's like a school setting or college, because I feel like, oh, here's a teaching moment, or I'm going through something. God has to train me. And sometimes in dreams, I know I'm dreaming and I'm like, oh, this is not what I wanted, God. Like, this is not what I was asking.
Right.
I'm like trying to direct the movie as he's given it. I'm like, no. Can you answer me in a different way? So, oh my gosh. Sorry.
You're a lucid dreamer.
Sometimes, actually, and I'll get to this a little bit later, how I dream has changed. So I'm learning, like I said, like I'm having to be adaptable and flexible. But yeah, sometimes I was like very lucid dreaming. Like I knew I was dreaming and I knew it was a message from God. So I was like, okay, I got to pay attention. And I would actually say that in my dream, like, remember this detail, remember this detail. So actually, this is one of the dreams that I was saying to myself, remember this detail, remember this detail. And at this point, I used to have my phone by the bed and I had a recording app, and I would just wake up and just say as much detail as I could. Because then when I would wake up in a few hours, I would listen to it. And I was like, oh, that's really, I don't even know if I can understand myself, but I was like, I was really sleepy, but so I'll give you the dream. So here's an example of a dream that really kind of like, it really gave me a lot of anguish because I didn't understand it fully at the time, but over time, as real life played out, the dream's meaning was spot on. But when I had it, it was very confusing because I didn't know what was going on and I didn't understand this dream. So the person that I was dating, we were both in the dream on the college campus, and we met up before class and everything was fine. And he was carrying like a book, a laptop, and headphones, which was important because, he had, one of his passions was like music. So that's how I saw it. The laptop I felt like was like representative work. And then the books, he was just like, erudite, just, constantly learning, researching. So I just kind of felt like, okay, that fits his personality before class. And then we went to class. And then after class, I was coming back up the stairs, back to our meeting spot. And then off in the distance, I saw him and there was like panic and pandemonium. And it just looked like a scary event was happening, like where people were just panicking and running. And then in the middle of it, this gentleman, his left ring finger was bleeding in the dream. And it was like dramatic bleeding. And that's another thing I learned about God. God's very, I feel like when he wants to highlight something, very it's like graphic. Exaggerated. Because his ring finger was bleeding like a fire hydrant, off of maybe like a little paper cut, but it was like blood everywhere and people were screaming and running. And I was kind of like from a distance still, how you're like, you're going to go meet someone and, you see him off in the distance. So I saw this happening. He was grabbing his ring finger. No one was around, was helping him. He dropped his books, laptop, and headphone, and he started running. And then so I ran over there, picked up his books, laptop, and headphone. And then I was running parallel with him in the dream. But it was interesting because in the dream, I was running parallel, but he wasn't really looking at me and I wasn't looking at him. It was like we were like in two track lanes. We were both in our own lane. Yeah. And we were running. And then we made it to security campus, or the campus security, sorry. And they gave us bicycles to continue our journey because he was running for the hospital. And so in the dream, I remembered the hospital was 5 minutes away. And then so we rode the campus to the hospital very quick. And then immediately the dream switched to him sitting on the hospital gurney, and his finger was bandaged up and everything. And in the dream, I asked him this question. I said, oh my God, I said, what happened? And he said, well, because the weather is cold in Serbia, we cut the keys in half. And in the dream, the laptop was there. So I was thinking like, okay, is this his laptop keys and things like that? And then that was the end of the dream. Then I woke up and I was like, okay, what does that mean? And you know what? I actually messaged that person because we were dating. I'm telling you, nothing on the surface, nothing funny would ever give a clue that anything was amiss. I actually literally text that person that morning, and we were actually at the peak and the highlight of like a great relationship. It was really just going well. No arguments, no personality conflicts, nothing. And I actually messaged this person and I said the same thing, like, oh, you were in my dream last night, LOL, try to see like how they would take it. And his response was like, oh, that's funny. But he's like, that's crazy. He's like, everything's wonderful. Everything's like awesome, right? And one thing that I've learned is that sometimes dreams really speak to the future. So honestly, when I think about it, maybe at that exact moment, not everything was awesome and things like that. But God was showing me that there was things behind the scenes, like, you know, in his life and in his heart, pardon me, that were going to lead up to this event. And so sometimes I feel like God gives kind of like warning dreams to prepare you. And actually that's how I felt. Because then I think it was almost like a month later to the date that things started falling apart. Like he abruptly left his job, gave like a 2 weeks notice after working there for a number of years, top company, you know, top dream job type things like that. Kind of disappeared, kind of left friends, and kind of just fell off the face of the map. And it was really overwhelming because it was so abrupt. Like even like colleagues and friends were just kind of like, what's going on, right? So I learned a lot with that because I felt like at that time, I didn't understand why God gave me that dream. I was really kind of upset. I was like, God, are you telling me it's not going to work out? Everything's like going great. I actually just checked in with him. He was like great, right? But God's like, just wait, right? Just wait. And then so that's what happened. And then I had a number of dreams of this individual over time as well. And a number of things led to, you know, just us not working out. But this was like the first dream that kind of gave me that clue that this was going to be, you know, a breakup. So it was actually kind of preparing my heart for that. So I'm thankful for that. Sorry.
That's okay.
You can mute me during breaks. This is mommy life. This is real life.
That's right.
I have to be candid. But yeah, so that was the riddle. It was like I said, the gentleman, he was from Serbia, and I'm getting out the exact quote now because I want to make sure I'm saying it right. But
because it's cold in Serbia, they cut the keys in half. That's what I remember too.
Right. Yeah. So that was the last thing, because the weather is cold in Serbia, his home country. We cut the keys in half, but he was holding his laptop at the time. So I was like, and honestly, I was like, well, maybe he's just not happy at work. I'm like, yeah, you know.
Now you guys work together, right? You guys work at Facebook together.
Right. Correct.
Yeah, because I remember that was a key for part of understanding.
Right.
It was interesting. Now, wasn't there a part at the beginning where you were like sitting on a bench with him, and then like his ex-girlfriend walked up?
Wow. Yeah, you remember a lot. I actually had to pull up the dream. Like, you have a really good memory. Yeah. So I love that the dream can be lengthy. So I don't know how much you wanted to dive into it, but let me pull it up.
You can share the whole thing if you want to.
Well, let me see. I think sometimes with dreams, I get a little bit overwhelmed when it's so detailed, because then sometimes I wake up and I'm like, well, the bird was red and the ground was yellow. I mean, like sometimes it's so overwhelming. So I really just try to pull from it some main points so that it doesn't overwhelm me. So the main points was like, yes, it was a university campus. His ex-girlfriend was there, but she was like really happy that we were together. There was like no jealousy, no animosity, and things like that. But this was a key part. He was sitting on the bench with his ex-girlfriend, and then he leaned over and kissed her on the cheek when I was standing there. And I said, and this is just so mean, but it's funny because it was so my personality, even in the dream. And I'm just like, hey, I'm like, you're either with her or you're with me. I was like, but you can't be with both. And then, you know, he sided with me. But I think the thing to understand is that sometimes even you in the dream doesn't mean it's you. It could just be, you know, his present reality versus like, you know, his ex-girlfriend could represent his past and things that he was, things that he used to be into. So that could, I mean, now that I realize that maybe God was saying that like some things from his past were pulling him back.
Yeah.
But at the time I was like, I think I texted him that when I woke up. I was like, hey, like, is everything okay with your ex-girlfriend? I was like, you could see and things like that. And he was like, no, like, he was like, I'm over her. And I was like, are you sure? So I had to learn a lot with that dream.
Yeah, that was such a cool dream. Were you on a college campus or were you on the Facebook campus?
We were at a college campus in the dream. But in
Okay.
real life, we worked at Facebook campus together.
Right. Yeah, because I remember there was the part with the bench, and then the girlfriend or the ex sat next to him and kissed him on the cheek, and then we had a lot of discussion about that, and we talked about, I don't think it's like, oh my gosh, he's going to cheat or anything like that, and I don't feel like you felt that way either, but it was more like there was something in the past that still wanted a level of access or friendship. And so we were trying to figure that out, obviously, because later in the dream, when you got your ring finger splurting blood, it's like such a huge sign of something going on in the relationship. So we're trying to like, okay, what's the buildup? So the first sign was this park bench, and you walk up and there's this situation. I remember we even talked about, I felt like there was something that had to do with his mother. Do you remember that part?
His mother, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at the notes from this dream. I mean, maybe in a different dream. I was trying to pull up all the dreams about him during this time because, like I said, there was a number of dreams that were like leading up to what was going on in real life. But in this dream, I don't think his mother was in this
Okay.
dream. But yeah, just that riddle at the end, because the weather is cold in Serbia, we cut the keys in half. And one of the things that I learned, because I actually did end up going to Serbia and I have friends in Serbia, is that they are kind of cold people, and not in a rude way. Like, I love my Serbian friends, but they're closely, like, they're Slavic, so they're like closely kind of related to like how the Russian culture is.
Mhm.
And sometimes when you meet Russians or kind of like East Slavic, East Bloc people, they can kind of have a cold demeanor. But some of my
Mhm.
best friends have been from that region. It just kind of like, I think as Americans, we're so used, or maybe from California, because sometimes when I go to New York, I'm like, oh, these people are rude. They're cold, right? Um, it was kind of like that as well. So also, once I started traveling to Serbia and seeing like how people are from that nation, because he was living in America at this time, and it's hard to really understand a person when they're out of their element because they're just trying to adapt to like the American culture, right?
Mhm.
But when I would see him around his friends that were Serbian, of course he was different and things like that. But I think going to that nation and understanding like those people and what they go through, that really helped me understand the dream a lot. And it actually helped me to understand that this was not about me. This was something that was already inside of this person. This was something that, had nothing to do with me. I just happened to be there during this life when they were experiencing these things. So in Serbia, yeah, it's more cold, um, kind of in that way. And I also think personally, what he's gone through has really kind of seared his heart. Like, so like when I would think about this riddle in the dream, I would like when it said the weather is cold in Serbia, I actually felt like because Serbia is his home country, that's his heart.
Mhm.
So I felt like he had some coldness in his heart from things in his past and some resentment as well. So that's things that I learned weeks and months and maybe even years after the dream and after we had already broken up. It was like slowly coming out. And then after he kind of like disappeared and then came back, he kind of explained that he was going kind of through a midlife crisis and he wanted to change careers and he just had like a lot of confusion, internal confusion and things like that. So, but it took a while for that understanding of that dream to come into fruition.
Yeah, that was there was so much that I learned from that dream. Um, and one of the things that I learned was, if I remember correctly, you had the dream like in October, and then he went home like for Thanksgiving. But then when he went home, it was like he ghosted you. Like he just nothing. There was nothing at all after that, and you were just kind of left with like, what the heck, dude? And then when you and I started talking about this dream, it was like 10 months after you had had the dream. And we got, after meeting like 3 times, having coffee, you, me, your sister, unpacking this, I felt like we finally got to a really good conclusion on what the dream meant. But it was like, well, why did God, I didn't understand the dream before. Why didn't he give me the understanding before? And this to me cemented in my mind what I call the do not open until Christmas letter. How God will literally hide information in the past and say, I gave you this dream when there was no thought in your mind that you would break up. And now 10 months later, after it's happened and you've gone through some of the trauma of the ending of the relationship, and now you're healing and you're kind of past it a little bit. Now you get the full understanding, but I just want to let you know that I postmarked it beforehand as if to say, this is from God and this is what's coming. You're muted.
This is why it's muted in the background. Late night shenanigans.
Yes.
I think that's excellent how you describe that, because that's really what that dream was. It was like a foreshadowing to kind of prepare my heart. And I think the best way to kind of describe that is saying, like, I was able to brace for impact. It wasn't just like, I've actually been in a few car accidents, and I've been T-boned and blindsided sometimes. And they actually say different things. They actually say it's better if you're not aware, so your body's more relaxed. Or sometimes if you see, an impact about to occur, your body kind of tenses up and gets ready for it, though. But I think that's just kind of like your survival mechanisms. So for me, I think about it like that. I really feel like it was kind of like prepping me to kind of just, because it was really hard. And I always go back to that, like, because it was really just abrupt the way that this person kind of just abandoned and left, and just kind of, the way that they treated the whole situation. I mean, of course, years later, they come back and apologize and stuff. But at the time, there was no answers. So the only answers I had were really just from that dream and from God. And then God gave me a couple of other dreams during that time that kind of helped build onto that first initial dream. They weren't the same, and they didn't have the same themes, but they kind of had like a continuation of like what was going on and things like that. And during this time, it was really interesting because, like I said, a lot of my friends were big time dreamers. And I thought this was interesting. I don't know if I ever shared this with you, but one of my really good friends, we were like I want to say like besties and like, things like that. We actually had the same dream about him on the same night, and we were in two different locations. Like at the time we were roommates, but she was celebrating her birthday in the mountains. And then I actually had a college friend come down to Disneyland in Anaheim. So I was staying at the hotel there, and I had this dream. And then my girlfriend, her name is Jamie, she had a similar dream, but same exact message and everything on the same night, same theme and everything. And it was about this individual. So that was very cool too, because
I remember that.
Yeah, because it was super. Yeah. We actually had, I don't know if they're called twin dreams or what's this called, but we had that twice, where we had the same exact dream. And actually both times we were not under the same roof when we had them. Like we were roommates, so we were close, but we were not together when we had these dreams. And twice we had twin dreams about the same subject matter and everything. So that really blew my mind too. So it was interesting to learn about dreams and to see how God was even still speaking to me during these tough times. And just even while I was going through this tough time, how it was so neat to still see different ways that God was using people to talk to me and encourage me and to give confirmation. Because in the Bible, God does talks about how he confirms that it's him 2 to 3 times. He'll give witnesses and things like that. So when my girlfriend was having these twin dreams with me, I felt like God was solidifying, because I think with anything that's hard, like a breakup, even if God tells you that it's not your fault or he shows you what's going on, I think as humans, we still internalize it. We still are like, is it something I did? Wasn't this person, ready for me? And I think, having a psychology background as well helped a lot, because it helps you to understand that what people are going through is not a reflection of you. It's really what's going on in them. But it looks like it's you, because sometimes when people don't know how to process their trauma or what they're going through, they think it's the people around them. So they want to change the scene. They want to change their job. They want to, leave their spouse and things, because they think that that's the answer. But really it's, they have things that they need to work on internally. So it taught me a lot. It was a super tough one. And it's actually like at that time I was getting so many dreams that it was actually super overwhelming, that it was like a water faucet, like that God just had it turned on all the time. And I actually feel like it was too much for me to process, and even though God was giving me information, it was like I was synthesizing it and understanding it on a mental level, but it wasn't really penetrating my soul and my understanding in that way for a long time. So I actually told God, like, I don't want any dreams. I was like, you got to turn off the faucet. That's exactly what I said. I said, you got to turn off the faucet. I said, because every day, every night, it's like all these dreams, but I'm not able to connect the dots, and I'm like overwhelmed. So there was a time when I did tell God, like, I don't want any more dreams. This is too much for me.
I remember that. You were like, I hate dreams. I wish I would never dream again.
Right.
And it was that moment that was a critical breakthrough in my life when you said those words, because as you know, and I've shared with you and those in our community know this too, is I went through some things with regards to relationships and dreams that, I read something wrong and I was just trying to follow the dreams and I didn't know how to really unpack dreams at the time. And I was just like, when things didn't work out the way that I thought I would, and that I thought the dreams were telling me they would in a relationship, I was like, this is stupid. Why do I even write dreams down? So I threw them in a shoebox and put them in the back of my closet for like a year or two. And then I started getting back into dreams. And now obviously dreams are a huge part of my life. But it was when you said that I felt, so I had been through that journey too, of just like, dreams are dumb. I don't need them in my life. They don't, and I felt like, though, when you said it, I felt like the Holy Spirit was just like, ugh, like he got punched in the stomach. And I was like, well, that's okay. That's weird. And then I heard this. I heard, arise, my darling, my beautiful one, and come along. For behold, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. The flowers have appeared in the land. The time of singing has come. Like, I heard it as clear as day in my spirit. And I'm thinking, what the heck? And I recognize it was a verse from Song of Solomon. I'm like, what the heck does Song of Solomon have to do with the fact that this lady doesn't ever want to dream again? And and I'm processing that. I don't even know if I told you this, because I'm processing this while we're still having a conversation about the dream. And then I hear this. I hear, dreams are the love language of God to his kids. And I'd like to say that I took a moment and selah'd and was like, wow, that's a really deep revelation. But I immediately argued with God. I'm like, oh, I've always heard that there's demonic dreams, soul dreams, and God dreams.
Right.
And then the next thing he said, yeah, you should probably look that up. And so I spent like the next 2 years or so looking up every dream in the Bible, every verse on dreams, the background story, what happens next. And it's actually now turned into an online series we have free on YouTube. That's the Dream Through the Bible Study series. It's like 22 hours long, but we go through every single dream in detail.
Wow, that's incredible.
And I found that there's 0 demonic dreams in scripture. There's 0 soul dreams in scripture. And so this introduced me. It was that conversation where we were having coffee, you and your sister, at a coffee shop in LA, talking about this very dream, where the idea was first introduced into my spirit that what if all dreams come from God? And I resisted it big time. And I was like, no, no, no. What about nightmares? What about kids with nightmares? What about, and so it left this huge question that caused me to dig into scripture. And after I spent like 2 years digging into scripture, then I spent the next 2 years like, well, I got to prove this wrong. And so every time I've had a conversation with somebody, it would be, don't tell me your dream. Tell me the worst nightmare you've ever had. And in years of asking that question and hearing the most hellacious nightmares possible, every single one of them is a profound God dream. And so it was that moment with you and your sister in a coffee shop that literally gave me a revelation that I believe will change everything we think about dreams. Because now, again, I've fought this for 4 years. Nobody's been a bigger opponent to the idea that all dreams come from God. But at the same time, nobody's more convinced than me, because I went through and I looked at the scripture, and then we looked at nightmares. But this was like the inception point of this idea, was this dream. Because it's cold in Serbia, they cut the keys in half. So thank you.
Well, thank you, John, because honestly, I think until recently, like I had that dream 7 years ago, I think just recently you told me that was like a pivot point for you. Or maybe you told me back in the day, but honestly, I was maybe too much in my grief to, really like remember it. But it was definitely a turning point for me. I think that I've had some other dreams in between. Like I said, I've had a few dreams about colleagues and people and their businesses. And I kid you not, like within 4 months, it was happening. And it's like big time. And I would tell these people these dreams. And I always like to tell people dreams right when I have it, because I don't want to be one of those person that had the dream and then something happens and then I come back and they're like, well, of course, that's obvious, right? I like to tell them as soon as it happens, way before, there's any kind of like indication that this is about to happen. So, I've had some really good dreams like that. I feel like I'm slowly starting to ask God for dreams a little bit again. Like I said, just a couple months ago, I had that dream that, the client offered me the position. And then my girlfriend in California, called me like weeks before, and she's like, oh, I had a dream you got the job. Like, don't worry about it. And I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. That actually gave me a lot of peace. So I feel like maybe slowly God's working his way back up, and things like that. But yeah, I would just tell people that like I forgot where it says in the Bible verse, but it was like saying like where God says, open your mouth wide and I will fill it. And I think like with dreams, if that's something that you really want to pursue and understand, I feel like going after it, God will start pouring and downloading. But it's kind of true what when people say, be careful what you ask for, because sometimes, at least with me, it turned on like a faucet and it was like pouring and pouring and pouring. So I think it's good to kind of, start slow and build momentum and get under training and programs like yours, where it can help people navigate through that, so that it's not so overwhelming and it doesn't feel like a burden. Because sometimes I feel like seeing things about other people and then you don't have a community to share that with. Like, what does this mean in a dream? Is that a good sign, a bad sign? Like, I think it's important to have people in your life that can help you navigate that so that it doesn't feel overwhelming. Because I'm very analytical. Like I would obsess about the color of the flower in the dream. I'd be like, well, what does that mean? I mean, it was like purple. It was like not just purple, it was like 2 shades like lighter than violet. Like I would get really into it. And that would actually give me a lot of anxiety because I felt like, oh, I'm missing God and stuff. And then that's why now I'm just kind of like, I grab the broad strokes. God will fill in the details later. And actually, as life is happening, I'll say, oh, this is what that meant. Oh, that's what that meant. So I really try not to stress over it immediately. Even the dream that I had about the client offering me the role, it was still 2 days before they called me. But I was like, okay, I know that I'm going to be doing this and working with this person in their company, but it's just like still that kind of like win, that win. So for me, I feel like God gave me dreams to kind of soothe that anxiety, because I'm still human. I still have, emotions and feelings and, things that I have to work through. So I think that that's kind of cool that God will still speak to me how he knows I need to be spoken to, and that dream was very short. Like sometimes I've had a couple of dreams that were literally like 10 seconds, but very impactful. And I was like, oh, that was cool.
Those are cool.
Yeah, I like those because I'm just jotting them down and I can just hold on to them. And then there's some dreams that are very detail heavy and very saga and very drawn out. And there's a lot of elements. And then, different intergalactic beings are in it. And it's like, I don't know what's going on. I just feel like I'm in like, a Star Wars trilogy or something. And then it's like, those sometimes are draining, to be honest. Even just remembering them when you wake up and grabbing all the details, like so draining. So, I'm still learning and things like that. I think the good thing about God is that he knows where you're at and he knows how to speak to you and he knows what gets your attention. So that's what dreams have been to me. It actually kind of shows me that God knows me, Yeah,
that's so cool. You live such a cool dream life. I just love it. You're one of those awesome dreamer people. People are probably dying to know what we said the riddle meant. And I remember I was asking questions because the first thing is at the beginning, you didn't tell me the guy was from Serbia. And I was like, does this guy happen to be from Serbia? And you're like, yeah, actually he's Serbian. And I'm like, because it's cold in Serbia. I'm like, did he go there? And you're like, yeah, he went there a month later. And that's when kind of nothing from him after that. And I'm like, okay, so things turned cold when he went to Serbia. You're like, yeah. And then it was like, what the heck is the key? Do you remember when we were trying to figure out the key? I was like, did he have a key to your apartment? No. Does he have keys to your house? No. Do you share a key ring at work? No. And I'm like, what the heck does this key mean? And then God kept saying, they work at Facebook. Okay. Do you have a key card at Facebook to get? No. And then he kept saying, they work at Facebook. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I heard you, but what does that mean? Then all of a sudden it was like, oh, the laptop, the keys on the keyboard. What's the biggest key on the keyboard? Which is the space bar. And then it was the idea of your time together being cut in half because things turned cold when he went to Serbia. And then obviously with the gushing out of the ring finger and all of that, it was like, okay, now it started to make sense. And now he started to put a bow on it at the end. But you remember all that?
John, you're cracking me up because you remember more details than I do. Like I actually haven't even visited this dream in like 7 years, right? Because I've moved on, I've healed, I have like my kid now. But you're absolutely right. I had that dream while he was in America. You're right. It was like in October, I think September, October.
Mm-hmm.
And then
he went home for Thanksgiving.
For Thanksgiving break,
yeah.
Like when when Facebook gave us like 2 weeks or something, or you can work, like they were kind of doing like remote for stuff like that. And it's funny because the first 2 days that he was in Serbia, communication and relationship was as normal. And then there was one day where he just kind of like missed a day or two of communication. And I thought, okay, just time zone or whatever. I'm not very clingy. I'm just like, whatever. I don't really, investigate that, And then you're right. That's actually when things started to turn. And then a week later, when he came back, he was totally different. And you're right, because something happened in Serbia that triggered his heart, closed his heart down, something like that. And you're right. And chuckling because you're bringing back all these memories, and I'm like, oh, I forgot all the details. But yeah, you're right. It was space. He wanted space, but it wasn't me. And he told me this like years later, but at the time I thought it was me. But it's like I said earlier, he left his job like abruptly. He left his home in California. He left everything. Like he had a couple of apartments that he owned and everything. And he just kind of left that. And he went on this kind of weird voyage trying to figure himself out and stuff like that. So, long story short, it was really just kind of like him trying to get his own identity and trying to, kind of midlife crisis. But he was like 26, 27, 28, having this midlife crisis. So, I actually haven't really talked to him after that, but I don't really know what happened, if he ever became a Christian or things like that. Like after I healed, I really just moved on, and I really just kind of, not in a rude way, but just kind of moved on from our circle of friends as well. Like I still see, my friends on social medias and stuff, but I don't really engage with them or really check up or follow that whole storyline anymore. But, I have peace that whatever seeds I was able to plant with him, like with his curiosity with God, I just have peace that, that maybe they planted, maybe they rooted and things like that. So you have a really good memory. That's funny. Maybe I just have mommy brain. I mean, after you have a kid, like I don't remember much.
Wow. No, I think I remember it because of what kind of the punchline for me was. Like there were two things that were happening. One obviously was what was going on in your life, and that's what we were there to figure out. But that other part was this revelation, which I don't even think I probably didn't even share it with you because I didn't unpack it. I was just kind of like, well, that's a weird thought. Why am I thinking a Song of Solomon, and why am I feeling this thing? Well, she's talking about not wanting to dream. And then as I unpacked it years later, and then people began to ask me, when did you start to believe that all dreams came from God? Because for most people that teach dreams, it's almost heresy, because everybody is stuck in this frame of, well, there's demonic dreams. And I'm like, where does it say in the Bible that that the devil can even read our minds, let alone plant a thought in our unconscious or subconscious mind while we're sleeping? And if he could, wouldn't we all be watching Freddy Krueger on repeat every single night? And it doesn't happen. And then, of course, I've had every kind of question that you can imagine. In fact, when I taught this, when I was out at Reading at a prophetic conference kind of thing out there, somebody raised their hand when I said all dreams come from God. And they said, I had a dream I was raped by my father. Are you telling me God gave me that dream?
Wow, that's intense.
That was intense, because I couldn't go anywhere except through that. And I'm like, God, I don't. And he showed me her heart. And she, asked her a question. Well, how did you? God said this. You'll get a kick out of this, Jordan. God goes, ask her how she felt. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's about the dumbest question. I mean, I'm going to look like an idiot guy asking a woman, how did you feel? Like, God, really, I'm going to look like the most insensitive, idiot. God said, just ask her. So I asked her, and she said, I was annoyed. What? You're being raped and you were annoyed? She said, yeah, I had stuff to do. I'd wish he'd finish. I said, so you're looking at your watch, like, hurry up, I have laundry? And she said, yeah, pretty much. So no trauma associated with it at all. But then I saw this picture of like her heart with a black spot on it and the finger of God moving towards it, like to heal that spot in her heart. And every time he touched it, she would shrink away because it hurt. And to her, it felt like a violation or forced intimacy from the Father. And when I said that to her, she busted out sobbing. And she said, wow, you're 100% right. I know exactly what area it is. God's trying to God's trying to heal it. And basically it changed her life. And everybody in the room was like, wait a minute, what? Did he just prove that God gave her a dream about her father raping her? And that was from God. Like, wait a minute, what just happened? Everybody was just like, but it was clear because of how it resonated with her. And it was a mind-blowing thing. But there's been so many moments like that, which has caused us to do what we do in spiritual intelligence. We tell people, treat dreams like intelligence. And even if it's the most horrifying nightmare you have, write it down and ask God to give you an interpretation, because we do like 2 hours of live dream interpretation every week for like the last going on 2.5 years. And a lot of times we'll do specials that are nightmares only. Like, that's all we want to hear is nightmares.
Oh, it's not Shark Week. It's Nightmare Week.
Nightmare Week. Yeah. We should do Shark Nightmare Week. But
right.
Yeah, and we've heard some stuff, especially related to like kids and like, just all kinds of weird stuff. And every single time when we interpret those dreams, people are like, they feel so blessed because it wasn't that the enemy got into their dreams. And the way that I explain it, one other thing I remember about this dream is when you guys were on the park bench and then you went inside down an escalator to a movie theater. And I was like, this is meaning God is going to show you something. You're going to learn something, getting down to the base of the foundation of something that God is going to show you in the midst of this. So I couldn't wait for you to tell me what would happen next. And what happened next is, I don't think you even knew what the movie was. You just watched something on the screen. You came back up and then you went outside, and that's when his finger was gushing blood.
Right. Like I said, you really are blowing my mind with the memory of the details, because I had this written down and I had to go back and read it. So I did leave some elements out of the dream because, like I said, it was a very long dream. So yes, when we broke, to go to class, my class was downstairs and it was a movie theater. And I don't remember seeing anything on the screen. I just remember it was just like the movie theater setting. And then the curtain, the lights came back up, and then, class was dismissed, kind of thing. And you're right. We did discuss how, God was like prepping that to say, like, I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you, and I think that's, now that I'm thinking back on it, I think from a distance, I have been able to see and understand what happened and, why this person responded the way they did and things like that. Maybe like, just because, like I said, we had a circle of friends, and for a while, like that circle of friends were still very close community for a long time. So they were all aware, everybody was all like, checking in and make sure I was okay and things, and, or, giving me good messages and stuff like that, and just kind of keeping me up to date. But there was a point where I didn't want to be up to date anymore. And I think that's like kind of like when I was healed and I was like, okay, God, I'm good. I don't have to see anymore. And I want to say, I haven't had any dreams about him. I think I've had like maybe 1 or 2 dreams in like recent years about him, but I honestly can't remember them off the top of my head. But I remember that when I was dreaming about him during that time, it was very painful. But now it's like, totally healed from that, can see him married and having kids or anything like that. And it doesn't faze me at all. So, yeah, like I think once I was healed and once that saga was over, God shifted the dreams and the messages that were coming through it, So, yeah, like that's, I'm still just like in awe of like your memory of all the details of the dream. That's so funny.
That's so amazing. Well, one of the things that's really cool is when we have the talk about all dreams come from God, people immediately try to find the exception to the rule, which is what I did. I tried to find it in scripture. I couldn't find it. I tried to find it experientially. I couldn't find it. But people will say, well, what about a paralysis dream? What if I have a dream where I'm fighting a demon? And I say, you could go to some shady restaurant where some weird stuff happened in the room the night before, and you dream all night that you're battling a demon. And it's not the demon that's giving you the dream. It's God giving you the dream, letting you know what's happening in the spirit realm. And so what I say, and I never really connected it with your dream, but as we're unpacking it, I connect it now because you went downstairs into the movie theater. And so what I tell people is, in the movie theater of your dream life, only God has the keys to the projection room. In other words, Satan isn't showing you anything. It's not like, well, Satan gave you a bad dream. No, he did not. God gave you that dream. And it might be a warning dream. It might be a dream to tell you there's a demonic influence that you need to do business with. It might be completely encrypted, but it's graphic, so it has that punch, so it bothers you, or like they say in the Matrix, it's a splinter in your mind driving you mad, like this dream was for you, where we're talking about it 10 months later. You're like, I still don't know what this dream means with this stupid riddle and what the heck, and then we unpack it and then we find out the information. But that's how we explain it, is God's the one that gives us the visual. God's the one that enhances and gives us the seer gift.
I will say that that dream, I don't know if this is biblical in the verse or anything, but I will say that when I was dreaming prolifically during that time, it really did draw me closer to God, because I was more reliant and I had to go to him and like pray for understanding. Like it says, like, you know, if you ask for wisdom, I'll give it to you. So because the dream did come from him, carnal people, or, you know, I'm not saying I went to psychics or anything, but I'm just saying people that weren't connected to God that would try to say, well, this is what the dream meant. This is what the dream meant. I myself had to go to God, and that really pushed me into, you know, staying close to him and developing that relationship with him, so that I can get all the, you know, the understanding and the healing with it too. And I think, honestly, I keep going back to it because I think this is key, because I look at this with all dreams now. God gave me that dream to kind of brace for impact. And I really, if anything else, because I think like a lot of people say, well, why, you know, why did God allow that to happen? Why did this? Why did that? But I really feel like because it was going to happen anyways, but God did me a courtesy and kind of just let me know ahead of time, so I wasn't blindsided. Because I actually, when I think back on that, or some other kind of incidents that happen in life, whether it's business or just life circumstances, if I was blindsided and I didn't have that foresight, I think that would have been more detrimental and more damaging to me, because it was just such a huge blow at that time in my life. So I do appreciate that. I do feel like God gives like little glimpses, or he'll show me about people like that. I feel like that everything looks good on the surface. He'll give me a dream about them and I'll just cut ties. I'll be like, gotta go. I don't even stick around to wait to see how it's going to unfold. I'm just like, that's enough for me, God, I'm out.
That's amazing.
Yes. So I've learned to, like, if I get a dream from God, I learn to pivot quickly. I think that's probably the biggest thing I could say. Ooh. Even without the answers, even without all the understanding, you know, if
that's amazing. I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing such a vital part of, you know, again, the stream was such a highlight for me just because of what God showed me through this. But thank you for unpacking that and being real vulnerable and authentic about, you know, a tough time in your life, but what God showed in the meantime. And it's just always such a pleasure and a joy to talk dreams with you, Jordan.
I appreciate it, John. And now I'm in a different phase of life, mommyhood. So you get like the full transparency. Yep. I always tell people I like to be transparent and show, because I think that really encourages people of like real life situations. So I appreciate you giving me the platform to authentically just show up in our night jammies and river hanging over the edge over here. So thank you. And I appreciate what you do. I feel like you're helping a lot of people, and I'm definitely encouraged, and I'm excited that we're reconnected, and I hope to see you in person soon.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, thanks for being on, and we'll talk to you soon, Jordan.
All right. Bye.
Okay, bye. Wow. What an awesome story. I was so excited when I reconnected with Jordan to be able to share this with you guys, because so many of you have heard kind of like the punchline to the story, but being able to go back and revisit the dream where it all began, where we first heard that dreams are the love language of God to his kids, that led me on this journey of discovering that all dreams come from God, happened in a coffee shop in LA with Jordan, her sister, and I. And here we are 7 years, whatever, later, and still both dreamers and still hearing from God in a powerful way. So thank you for joining us tonight. We just appreciate you being with us and being part of the journey and being part of our community. And we'll see you next time on Dream Talks.